They dragged my suitcase to the front lawn and threw my clothes everywhere while laughing. My millionaire adopted family humiliated me in front of the entire neighborhood. Then a white limousine stopped right in front of our mansion. A man in a groom's suit stepped out holding a wedding dress. Everything changed in 60 seconds. What you're about to hear is absolutely insane. This is my story, and I still can't believe it happened to me. My name is Rachel, and this is the day my life went from a nightmare to a fairy tale in the most unexpected way possible. Let me take you back to the beginning. I was 7 years old when George and Margaret Hamilton adopted me. They were millionaires, real estate moguls with a mansion that looked like something out of a magazine. I remember thinking I was the luckiest girl in the world. They had 2 biological children, Sophia, who was 9 at the time, and Brandon, who was 5. On the surface, we looked like the perfect family. We attended charity galas, posed for society page photos, and everyone in town knew the Hamilton name. But here's the thing about perfect families. They're usually hiding the ugliest secrets. By the time I turned 16, I realized the truth. I wasn't adopted because they loved me or wanted to give a child a home. I was adopted to make them look good. The charitable millionaires who rescued an orphan, that's what the newspapers called them. It boosted their image, opened doors in high society, and made them seem like saints. Behind closed doors, though, I was treated like unpaid help. Sophia got designer clothes for every season. I got her hand-me-downs. Brandon got a sports car when he turned 18. I got a lecture about being grateful for having a roof over my head. I worked at the family company, handling paperwork and managing schedules, but I was never paid properly. Whenever I asked about a real salary, Margaret would smile that cold smile and say, "We gave you a home, Rachel. That's payment enough." I started tutoring kids in the neighborhood secretly, saving every dollar I could. I knew I couldn't stay forever, but I didn't know how to leave either. That house was all I'd known for 21 years. Then everything exploded 3 months ago. George had made some terrible investments, and the family company was hemorrhaging money. I knew because I handled the books. One evening, they called an emergency family meeting in the grand living room. I walked in to find a man I'd never seen before sitting in my father's favorite chair. He was older, maybe 65, with silver hair and a smile that made my skin crawl. His name was Lawrence Sterling, and he was a wealthy investor. George didn't waste time. "Lawrence has agreed to invest $50 million in our company," he announced, looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. "In exchange, Rachel, you'll marry him." I actually laughed. I thought it was a joke, but nobody else was laughing. Margaret leaned forward. "This will save our family, Rachel. Lawrence is a respected businessman. You'll want for nothing." Lawrence looked at me like I was a car he was considering buying. "She'll do nicely," he said, his voice making me nauseous. I stood up, my hands shaking. "No, absolutely not. I'm not for sale." The room went silent. George's face turned red. Sophia smirked from the couch like she was watching her favorite reality show. Brandon started recording on his phone. "You ungrateful little—" George started, but I cut him off. "I'm not ungrateful. I'm a human being, not a business transaction." That's when I made my second mistake. Or maybe it was the best decision I ever made. In my anger, I blurted out the truth I'd been hiding for 6 months. "I'm already in a relationship anyway. His name is Adrian, and he actually loves me. Not my name, not my connections, just me." The explosion that followed was nuclear. Sophia burst out laughing. "Adrian? That broke guy from the coffee shop where you waste your time? Oh my God, this is priceless!" Margaret's hand came out of nowhere. The slap echoed through the room and my cheek burned. "You'll ruin everything we built." George stood up, his voice deadly quiet. "You have 1 hour, Rachel. Marry Lawrence or get out of this house." I touched my stinging cheek and looked at each of them. These people who I'd called family for 21 years. These people who never saw me as anything more than a prop in their perfect life picture. "I'd rather have nothing than be bought like this," I said. Brandon laughed, still filming. "This is going straight to my story. Everyone needs to see this." I turned and walked toward the stairs to pack my things. I thought they'd at least let me leave with dignity. I was so wrong. I'd barely started putting clothes in my suitcase when they stormed into my room. All of them. Sophia started ripping clothes from the closet. "These were mine anyway," she screamed, throwing dresses on the floor. "You think you own anything in this house?" Brandon grabbed my suitcase and, before I could stop him, threw it out the window. I heard it crash on the front lawn 2 stories below. Margaret's voice was shrill. "Everyone needs to see what happens to ungrateful children." George was already on his phone. I heard him calling neighbors, staff, even some of their society friends. "Come by the house. There's quite a show happening." They dragged me down the stairs. I tried to pull away, but George's grip on my arm was iron tight. When we got to the front door, he shoved me outside into the bright afternoon sun. It was a beautiful day, actually. Clear blue sky, warm sunshine, birds singing, the kind of day that should have been perfect. Instead, it became the worst moment of my life. They started throwing my belongings onto the lawn. Books, clothes, photos, shoes, everything scattered across the perfectly manicured grass. Neighbors started gathering. I saw our housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, with tears in her eyes, but she couldn't do anything. The gardener stood frozen with his rake. People from neighboring mansions walked over, phones out, recording everything. Sophia stood on the front steps like she was giving a press conference. "She refused to help the family," she announced dramatically. "After everything we gave her, she's too selfish to do one simple thing." Brandon posted to his social media in real time. "Our charity case thinks she's too good for us. Watch this ungrateful show." That's when Lawrence Sterling's car pulled up. He stepped out, adjusted his expensive suit, and smirked at me. "Shame, Rachel. You would have had a very comfortable life. Now look at you." The laughter was the worst part. They were all laughing. George, Margaret, Sophia, Brandon, even some of the neighbors who'd always smiled at me before. I stood there in the middle of my scattered life, humiliated and broken. Margaret's voice carried across the lawn. "You'll never survive without us, Rachel. You're nothing without the Hamilton name." My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone, but I managed to pull it out and dial the one number I knew would answer. Adrian picked up on the first ring. "Rachel, what's wrong?" His voice was concerned, and that almost broke me. "I need you," I whispered, trying not to cry in front of this crowd. "They threw me out. I have nowhere to go." His voice changed completely. It went from gentle to commanding in 1 second. "I'm 10 minutes away, don't move. Do you hear me? Just hold on. Adrian, I don't know what to do. Rachel, trust me. Just hold on, I'm coming." The call ended, and before I could process what just happened, Sophia snatched the phone from my hand. "Calling your poor boyfriend?" She laughed. "What's he gonna do? Take a bus here? Maybe he can help you carry your garbage bags." More laughter. I closed my eyes and wished the ground would swallow me whole. The crowd was still mocking me, still taking photos and videos when I heard it. The sound of powerful engines in the distance, getting closer. Everyone stopped talking. A white stretch limousine turned onto our street, but it wasn't alone. Behind it was a convoy of 6 luxury cars, Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, Mercedes. They moved like a presidential motorcade, smooth and powerful and absolutely impossible to ignore. The noise died completely. Even Sophia stopped mid-laugh. Margaret grabbed George's arm. "Who is that?" The limousine stopped directly in front of our mansion, right in the middle of all my scattered belongings. The cars behind it formed a perfect line. Chauffeurs in uniform jumped out and opened doors, but everyone was watching the limousine. The driver rushed to open the back door, and my heart stopped. Adrian stepped out, and I didn't recognize him at first. He was wearing a complete groom's outfit, an absolutely stunning white designer suit with gold embroidery that caught the sunlight. It looked like something a prince would wear. But what made me gasp was what he was carrying in his hands. A wedding dress, a gorgeous champagne-colored gown covered in crystals that sparkled like diamonds. He walked straight toward me, his eyes locked on mine, ignoring every single person staring at him. "Adrian?" I whispered, confused. "What's happening?" Behind me, I heard Sophia's voice, high and panicked. "Wait, that can't be..." George was pulling out his phone, his hands shaking. I heard Brandon swear under his breath. Adrian stopped right in front of me and, to my absolute shock, got down on one knee, right there on the lawn in front of everyone, surrounded by my scattered belongings. "Rachel," he said, his voice clear and strong so everyone could hear. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you everything. My full name is Adrian Westbrook." The gasps were instant. I heard multiple phones hitting the ground. Brandon's voice cracked. "Adrian Westbrook, CEO of Westbrook International. That's $4.8 billion. I stared at Adrian, my mind unable to process what was happening. Westbrook International. I'd heard that name before. Everyone had. It was one of the largest investment firms in the country. And Adrian, Margaret actually stumbled backward. George's face had gone completely white. Adrian took my hand. "I loved that you never once asked me what I did for a living. I loved that you split coffee shop bills with me. I loved that you judged me on how I treated the waitress, not what car I drove. You saw me, Rachel. The real me." He held up the wedding dress, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I was planning to propose next month. I had this whole elaborate thing planned, a beach at sunset, musicians, the works. But then I got your call, and I heard the pain in your voice, and I realized something. His eyes were fierce now. "You don't need a perfect moment. You need to know that you're valued. You need to know that someone sees how priceless you are." He pulled out a ring box, and when he opened it, I heard several people gasp. The diamond was huge, brilliant blue, catching the light like captured sky. "Rachel, marry me. Right now, right here. Let them see who you really are, not someone who can be bought or sold or thrown away. Priceless, irreplaceable, mine, if you'll have me." Tears were streaming down my face. "Adrian, I don't understand." "Do you love me?" he asked simply. "Yes, but..." "Do you trust me?" "Yes." "Then marry me, right here on this street. Show them that you don't need their name or their money or their approval. Show them that real love doesn't calculate worth in dollars." My voice was shaking. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. Adrian never did anything halfway. The neighborhood erupted. Neighbors who'd been watching the humiliation now started cheering and clapping. Mrs. Chen was crying happy tears. Even the mailman who'd just arrived started applauding. But the Hamilton family? They stood frozen, their mouths open, their faces a mixture of shock and horror. Adrian helped me to my feet and kissed me softly. "Mrs. Westbrook," he whispered against my lips. "How does that sound?" "Perfect," I whispered back. "It sounds perfect." What happened next was like something out of a movie. The doors of those 6 luxury cars opened, and people started emerging like this was all choreographed, because apparently it was. A wedding planner in an immaculate suit appeared with a whole team. Makeup artists and hairstylists surrounded me with gentle hands and warm smiles. A photographer and videographer started setting up professional equipment, and then an elegant older woman stepped out of one of the Bentleys and walked straight to me. "Rachel," she said warmly, pulling me into a hug. "I'm Catherine, Adrian's mother. Welcome to the family, darling. My son has told me so much about you." An older gentleman appeared beside her, his eyes kind. "Adrian's father, Jonathan. We're honored to meet the woman who captured our son's heart." I was overwhelmed. "I don't understand. How is all this happening?" Catherine smiled. "When Adrian loves, he loves completely. He's been planning this for weeks, just waiting for the right moment. When you called today, he mobilized everything." A crew was setting up right on the street. They rolled out a white carpet over my scattered belongings. Elaborate flower arrangements appeared, roses, lilies, orchids in white and champagne in gold. A string quartet emerged from one of the cars and started playing soft, beautiful music. The makeup artist guided me behind a designer privacy screen that had been set up on the lawn. "Let's make you the most beautiful bride," she said kindly. 20 minutes later, I emerged in that dress Adrian had been holding. It fit like it was made for me, because I later learned it was. Adrian had somehow gotten my measurements and had this custom designed weeks ago. The champagne fabric hugged my curves, and the crystals caught every ray of sunlight. My hair was styled in soft waves, my makeup was perfect but natural, and when I looked in the mirror they held up, I didn't recognize myself. I looked like a bride. I looked happy. I looked free. The neighbors had multiplied. The entire street was lined with people now, all watching with phones and cameras. This was unprecedented in our wealthy, reserved neighborhood, but I didn't care anymore. Margaret tried to approach as I stepped out from behind the screen. "Rachel, darling, perhaps we should talk inside. This is all very sudden." A man in a dark suit, Adrian's security, stepped between us smoothly. "The family has been asked to maintain their distance." George tried a different approach, walking toward Adrian with his hand extended and that fake smile he used for business deals. "Mr. Westbrook, I'm George Hamilton, Rachel's father. Perhaps we could discuss a business partnership." Adrian's expression went ice cold. It was a look I'd never seen on him before, and it was terrifying. "You're the man who threw his daughter on the lawn like garbage. You tried to sell her to that predator for $50 million. I don't do business with people like you. I don't acknowledge people like you." George's face flushed red, but he stepped back. A minister appeared, young, warm, official. Adrian had thought of everything. The ceremony began right there on that street in bright afternoon sunshine. Adrian and I stood on that white carpet, surrounded by flowers and music and genuine smiles from his family, and the strangers turned witnesses in the neighborhood. The minister's words washed over me like a dream. But when it came time for vows, Adrian's voice was steady and clear. "Rachel, you deserved a palace, but I'm giving you this moment instead. Right here where they tried to break you, I want you to rise. You are the strongest, kindest, most genuine person I've ever met. You're going to be an amazing wife, and I promise to spend every day proving that you made the right choice, saying yes." My turn. I took a shaky breath. "Adrian, 6 months ago you ordered the worst coffee combination I'd ever heard, and you laughed when I told you so. You came back every day and we talked about books and dreams and stupid TV shows. You never once tried to impress me with money or status. You gave me something these people never could: real love, real respect, real partnership. I can't believe this is happening, but I've never been more sure of anything. I love you. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Adrian pulled me close and kissed me like we were the only two people in the world. Flower petals rained down. Someone on his team was throwing them from above. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Camera flashes went off like fireworks. When we broke apart, Adrian turned to face the Hamilton family, who were still standing on their front steps looking shell-shocked. Sophia was screaming, her face red and ugly. This was supposed to be my moment. I was supposed to marry rich. This isn't fair. Brandon was frantically trying to delete his earlier social media posts, but it was too late. The video of my humiliation had already been shared thousands of times, and now people were filming the wedding, creating a story with a very different ending. Lawrence Sterling was trying to slip away to his car unnoticed, but Adrian wasn't done. Adrian pulled out his phone and made a call right there in front of everyone. His voice carried clearly in the afternoon air. "Yes, Jonathan, it's me. Cancel the Sterling investment deal with Hamilton Real Estate. Immediately. Send out a press release that Westbrook International finds the Hamilton family's business practices incompatible with our ethical standards." George's face went from red to white in seconds. "No, please, you can't." Adrian wasn't finished. "Also, I want you to make an offer to buy out Hamilton Real Estate. Offer 30 cents on the dollar. They're desperate enough they'll accept within a week." Margaret actually collapsed onto the front steps, hyperventilating. Sophia rushed to her, shooting venomous looks at us. Adrian turned to George, his expression calm but absolutely ruthless. "You wanted $50 million to save your company? You just lost $200 million in company value. By tomorrow morning, every investor in the city will know what you tried to do. By next week, you'll be lucky to keep this house." He looked at Margaret, who was sobbing. You told Rachel she was nothing without your name. Let me tell you something, Mrs. Hamilton. That girl tutored kids for $2 an hour and saved enough to survive because she's resourceful and strong. My wife doesn't need you. She never did. But you needed her kindness, her work, her image, and you threw it all away." Brandon tried to speak up, his voice cracking. "Dude, I'm sorry. I was just joking around." "You filmed a woman's humiliation for entertainment," Adrian cut him off. "You're trending right now, Brandon. The whole world is watching. How does it feel?" Sophia made one last desperate attempt, smoothing her hair and approaching Adrian with what she probably thought was a seductive smile. "Adrian, clearly there's been a misunderstanding. Maybe we could talk privately." He didn't even look at her. "Security, please escort these people inside their house. They're disturbing my wedding reception." Adrian's security team gently but firmly ushered the Hamilton family back toward their front door. George was on his phone desperately calling people. Margaret was still crying. Sophia was screaming insults. Brandon looked like he might be sick. Adrian turned to me and took both my hands. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Westbrook?" I looked at my scattered belongings still on the lawn, mixed now with flower petals and white carpet. 21 years of my life spread across that grass. I walked over slowly and picked up just one thing, a small framed photo of 7-year-old me on my first day with the Hamilton family. I was smiling in that picture, hopeful and innocent. I left everything else. I took Adrian's hand. "I'm ready." We walked to the limousine together while the entire neighborhood cheered. Mrs. Chen was openly weeping happy tears. The mailman whistled. Someone started throwing more flower petals. Behind us, I could hear Sophia's voice, shrill and desperate. "This isn't over. You can't just—" I looked back one last time at that mansion, at those people who'd pretended to be my family. George was screaming into his phone. Margaret had her head in her hands. Sophia looked like she wanted to murder someone. Brandon was reading comments on his viral video, his face getting paler by the second. I felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, just freedom. "I forgive you," I said quietly, knowing they probably couldn't hear me over the noise. "But I'll never forget what you showed me about who you really are." Adrian helped me into the limousine. The door closed, muffling the chaos outside. Inside was quiet, cool, peaceful. Champagne waited in ice. Soft music played. Adrian's parents were in another car, giving us privacy. As we drove away, I watched through the tinted windows as the Hamilton family stood in the ruins of their reputation, surrounded by my scattered belongings and their scattered dignity. Adrian pulled me close. "Are you okay?" I thought about it. "You know what? I really am." "Good," he smiled. "Because I actually do have a beach wedding planned for next month. This was just the warm-up." I laughed, really laughed. For the first time in months. That was 8 months ago. Adrian and I did have that beach wedding. Intimate, beautiful, just family and real friends. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of. The Hamilton real estate company collapsed within 3 months, just like Adrian predicted. George and Margaret lost the mansion. It was bought by a young family with adopted children, which I found beautifully ironic. Sophia works retail now at a department store. I saw her once from a distance. She looked tired. Brandon's video haunts him. He can't get a job anywhere because when employers search his name, that video comes up first. Lawrence Sterling got investigated for some shady business practices, and his other investments fell apart. And me? I'm living my best life with a man who saw my worth when I had nothing. Adrian introduced me to his world, but he also supported me in building my own. I started a nonprofit for adopted children and foster kids. I make sure they know their value isn't determined by the families they're placed with. The Hamiltons send cards now. Birthday cards, Christmas cards, apologetic cards. I return every single one unopened. Some bridges once burned should stay that way. If this story gave you chills, if it made you feel something, I hope you'll share it. Share it with anyone who's ever been underestimated, undervalued, or thrown away by people who should have loved them. Comment below if you've ever had to walk away from toxic family. Tell me your story. I read every single comment. And remember this, Your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. Never let anyone treat you like you're less than extraordinary. The people who are meant to be in your life will see your light, even when you're standing in your darkest moment. Thanks for listening to my story. And if you're going through something similar right now, hold on. Your limousine might be just around the corner.